my dear Wormwood. So, your man is in love, and in the worst kind he could possibly have fallen into, and with a girl who does not even appear in the report you sent me. You may be interested to learn that the little misunderstanding with the secret police which you tried to raise about some unguarded expressions in one of my letters has been tidied over. If you were reckoning on that to secure my good offices, you will find yourself mistaken. You shall pay for that as well as for your other blunders. Meanwhile, I enclose a little booklet just issued on the new House of Correction for incompetent tempters. It is profusely illustrated, and you will not find a dull page in it. I have looked up this girl's dossier, and I am horrified at what I find. Not only a Christian, but such a Christian. A vile, sneaking, simpering, demure, monosyllabic, mouse-like, watery, insignificant, virginal bread and butter miss. The little brute. She makes me vomit. She stinks and scalds though the very pages of the dossier. It drives me mad the way the world has worsened. We'd have had her to the arena in the old days. That's what her sort is made for. Not that she'd do much good there either. A two-faced little cheat. I know the sort. Who looks as if she'd faint at the sight of blood, and then dies with a smile. A cheat every way. Looks as if butter would melt in her mouth and yet has a satirical wit. The sort of creature who would find me funny. Filthy, insipid little prude, and yet ready to fall into this Bobby's arms like any other breeding animal. Why doesn't the enemy blast her for it? If he's so moonstruck by virginity instead of looking on there, grinning. He's a hedonist at heart. All those fasts and vigils and stakes and crosses are only a facade, or only like foam on the seashore. Out at sea, out in his sea, there is pleasure, and more pleasure. He makes no secret of it. At his right hand are pleasures for evermore. Ugh, I don't think he has the least inkling of that high and austere mystery to which we rise in the miserific vision. He's vulgar, Wormwood. He has a bourgeoisie mind. He has filled his world full of pleasures. There are things for humans to do all day long without his minding in the least. Sleeping, washing, eating, drinking, making love, playing, praying, working. Everything has to be twisted before it's any use to us. We fight under cruel disadvantages. Nothing is naturally on our side. Not that that excuses you. I'll settle with you presently. You have always hated me and been insolent when you dared. Then, of course, he gets to know this woman's family and whole circle. Could you not see that the very house she lives in is one that he ought never to have entered? The whole place reeks of that deadly odor. The very gardener, though he has only been there 5 years, is beginning to acquire it. Even guests, after a weekend visit, carry some of the smell away with them. The dog and the cat are tainted with it, and a house full of the impenetrable mystery. We are certain, it is a matter of first principles, that each member of the family must in some way be making capital out of the others, but we can't find out how. They guard as jealously as the enemy himself the secret of what really lies behind this pretense of disinterested love. The whole house and garden is one vast obscenity. It bears a sickening resemblance to the description one human writer made of heaven, the regions where there is only life, and therefore all that is not music is silence. Music and silence. How I detest them both. How thankful we should be that ever since our father entered hell, though longer ago than humans reckoning in light years could express, no square inch of infernal space and no moment of infernal time has been surrendered to either of those abominable forces, but all has been occupied by noise. Noise, the grand dynamism, the audible expression of all that is exultant, ruthless, and virile. Noise which alone defends us from silly qualms, despairing scruples, and impossible desires. We will make the whole universe a noise in the end. We have already made great strides in this direction as regards the earth. The melodies and silences of heaven will be shouted down in the end, but I admit we are not yet loud enough, or anything like it. Research is in progress. Meanwhile, you disgusting little... In the heat of composition, I find that I have inadvertently allowed myself to assume the form of a large centipede. I am, accordingly, dictating the rest to my secretary. Now that the transformation is complete, I recognize it as a periodical phenomenon. Some rumor of it has reached the humans, and a distorted account of it appears in the poet Milton, with the ridiculous addition that such change of shape are a punishment imposed on us by the enemy. A more modern writer, someone with a name like Shaw, has however grasped the truth. Transformation proceeds from within and is a glorious manifestation of that life force which our Father would worship if he worshipped anything but himself. In my present form, I feel even more anxious to see you, to unite you to myself in an indissoluble embrace. Signed, Toadpipe. For his abysmal sublimity, Under Secretary Screwtape, TEBS, etc.
Now, I have to say, if you didn't actually listen to the reading at the beginning of this lesson today, I really suggest you go back and listen to it. Because when I was reading this chapter with the intent of making this video, I had no idea what I was going to do with the part where Screwtape accidentally turns himself into a centipede. I mean, the guy's going on and on and on like a Bond villain, pontificating about all the different things he's going to do and how he's essentially going to end the world, and then boom, he turns into a centipede and he has to have somebody else write it for him. Every time I read that part, I just start laughing to myself because it is really, really funny. And you shut up right now because nobody cares what you think.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, but you were thinking it.
Well, you would know. You're the one who keeps writing me as a disinterested jerk.
What? When you really think about it, I'm just a reflection of all your insecurities and self-hatred. All right, that's it. You get over here, right? Get over here. Sure. Sorry about that. Let's move on. There are 4 major developments within this chapter. The first one is that Screwtape actually turns into a centipede, which we talked about, and it doesn't really play that much into the story. It's just kind of fun. The next thing is we find out that Wormwood actually tried to get Screwtape in trouble with the intent of trying to take his position. Now, Screwtape gets out of it because he's a lot smarter than Wormwood, and then he describes to him that, don't you worry, I'll get you back, and here's a pamphlet of what happens to people who fail to tempt the humans that they're supposed to fail. I think that there's something there. There's something rather interesting. I mean, we have a lot of descriptions of hell. We see them in all kinds of popular media, and they tend to be ironic.
Beyond these doors is an agony worse than all others. You will remain in here for eternity, listening to whiny protest songs from the 60s.
Oh, I hate the government more than you and me. The government stole my goldfish and unplugged my TV.
Enjoy.
However, C.S. Lewis might be one of the first people I've heard of who's described hell as a corporate office. I think that's just great.
Are you crazy? Is that your problem?
The third development is that the patient actually meets a woman and falls in love with her. And this sends Screwtape into a rage because this woman is actually a true Christian. Not only is she a true Christian, but so is her family and so are her friends. And so everything that she is anti what Screwtape is. In fact, he goes on and on to say that even the dog and the cat stink of their Christianity. Although I don't really believe that part about the cat because, let's face it, all cats are on the side of demons. The woman in this chapter actually serves as an ideal Christian person. She doesn't really exist in reality, but Screwtape describes a series of qualities and character traits that all Christians should actually strive for, and that's the purpose of describing her within the book. One of the first things he mentions is that she might faint at the sight of blood, but she would go to death with a smile. And what he's describing here is that just because a Christian might find some day-to-day things kind of bothersome or even frightening, their faith can be rock solid. You don't have to be superhuman in the day-to-day. as long as you stay solid in your faith to the end.
Because I'm with you to the end of the line.
The next thing he says is that she looks as if butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, but she has a satirical wit, the kind of person who would find Screwtape funny. Now, this might sound a little strange to our ears, but basically what he's describing here is he's kind of describing this stereotypical English woman that you kind of see in movies and TV, who's always very, very serious, and it doesn't seem like they have a joke in their bone, yet at the same time they can say something so biting and so, pointed that it just throws everybody to the floor.
Simple vulgarity is no substitute for wit.
And even though they can be this serious, they can also find the humor in even some of the worst moments. Now that might sound strange to some of us as Christians, but the reality is that this world is a dark place. So being able to find humor in even the darkest of times is actually a good Christian quality. The final development of this chapter is that we actually get some more insights into hell. We find out that everything that hell does, everything that the demons do, is actually some twisted form of good. They don't actually create anything. This is how Screwtape puts it. He, meaning God, has filled his world full of pleasures. There are things for humans to do all day long without his minding in the least. Sleeping, washing, eating, drinking, making love, playing, praying, working. Everything has to be twisted before it's any use to us. We fight cruel disadvantages. Nothing is naturally on our side. This is an idea that has been in Christianity for a long time. The idea that only God is the one who creates anything, and Satan doesn't create anything at all. All he can do is twist it. Now, this idea can be found in all kinds of literary works. If you've ever read the book Paradise Lost, this is the novelized story of Satan falling from heaven and then forming hell, and then after that, tempting Adam and Eve. In that whole story, it talks a lot about how Satan is only able to take things in the world and twist them to evil. He's never able to create anything. We also see this in the book The Lord of the Rings. If you've seen the movies or you've read the books, one of the creatures that you hear about a lot are the orcs. Now, if you read deeper into the story, you find out that the orcs aren't actually evil creatures to begin with. In fact, they're actually elves, some of the best creatures in the story. They're elves who have been twisted and become evil. Now, it's no surprising that the writer of Paradise Lost and the writer of Lord of the Rings are both Christians. However, it makes sense when you actually read the Bible. The Bible actually puts it this way. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit in the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." So was it wrong for Jesus to want to eat? Absolutely not. Would it have been wrong for him to turn stones into bread? No. In fact, he almost does that exact thing just a few chapters later in the book of Matthew when he feeds the 5,000 with just a kid's lunch. What was bad about it was Satan's intent. He was trying to take Jesus doing something good and use it for something evil. Now, obviously, Jesus didn't fall for that trap. But do you see the point? Satan can't create. All he does is twist and turn and make good things evil. Now, the last insight that we get into hell in this chapter is the fact that the goal of hell is to actually bring all of creation to a state of noise. Screwtape puts it like this. How thankful we should be that ever since our Father entered hell, no square inch of infernal space and no moment of infernal time has been surrendered to either of those abominable forces, but has been occupied by noise. Noise which defends us from silly qualms, despairing scruples, and impossible desires. We will make the whole universe a noise in the end. Personally, I find this part absolutely fascinating. Now, I've said repeatedly throughout this series that this is not a how-to book on how to understand demons and hell. However, there are elements of truth into the demonic world throughout this book, and I think this is one of them. Screwtape actually points out that he hates music and silence, and that he loves noise. And if you're quick to notice, noise is actually capitalized in your book. That's not a mistake. That was done on purpose. Because he's not just talking about general noise. He's talking about an end goal of hell, which they have named noise. Now, it might seem strange at first glance to think of music and silence being both equally good. But God doesn't see it that way. Now, I am not a music person. I enjoy listening to music. I like to have it on when I'm writing or if I'm working on something. But I'm not one of those people who seeks out lots of different kinds of music and wants to listen to it all the time. I have a lot of friends who are, though. But even I recognize, as someone who's not that big into music, I recognize that music is actually a gift from God. Consider it this way. Through music, we see creativity, beauty, pure emotion, and order, all in the same place. God is a God of creativity, beauty, desires pure emotion, and desires order. Why wouldn't music be something that he loves? So yeah, it makes total sense that God would love music. Why do you think that we sing songs on Sundays, sing praises to God? So the next question then is, what about silence? Well, the Bible actually has a very specific verse about this. You might have heard it before. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. So in one sense, we should enjoy God's creativity and his beauty. But then in another sense, we should try to shut out all the distractions of the world and embrace the silence of God at the same time. It's no wonder that Screwtape hates both of these things. So for Screwtape, the opposite of these things is noise. Noise is constant. It is droning. It is never ending, and it provides no joy. It doesn't provide any order, only chaos. It doesn't provide any insight because it drowns out all thought. It doesn't provide any peace because you can't focus on anything. There is only the noise. That is hell. You know, I think I just described my Facebook feed. So in closing, I want to ask you two questions. First off, when was the last time you just listened to music? And I don't mean had it on while you were doing something else or while you were talking to your friends. I mean, really just sat down and actually listened to the music. If it has words, did you think about the words and consider them? I would highly encourage you this week to take some time, maybe just one song, and just dwell on it. I would recommend make it a Christian song, but I would say it would even be beneficial to pick something that isn't a Christian song, as long as it actually is wholesome. Don't just pick some nasty piece of pop music and think that you're doing yourself any favors. The next thing I want to ask you to do is to take 5 minutes and sit in silence and listen for God. Turn off everything. Turn off your phone or put it into airplane mode and set a timer for just 5 minutes and just sit quietly. You might be surprised what happens. Maybe nothing major happens, but you took 5 minutes to focus on God. That's a lot more than a lot of people have done in their entire lives. So let's start making that a habit. The only way to start a habit is to start something one time. So listen to some music, turn off everything else, and take 5 minutes of silence. I bet you God will do something amazing, even if it's just to get you to remember that he's right there with you. In the end, guys, we will always be fighting a battle between distraction and focusing on God. But if we never take those moments to really focus in on God, we won't just lose the battle, we'll lose the war. So let's take that time. Thank you so much again for joining me. We will be continuing in this book next week, so I hope to see you guys again. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care.